So, in partnership with Enough is Enough, we want to have a quick chat with Yemi Adamolekun, and we want to discuss this hashtag End Bad Governance protest.
I want to be talking about Nigeria all week. Don't worry, you have plenty listeners tuned in to listen.
But tell us, Yemi Adamolekun, this conversation around protests, I'm a bit wary. Because I don't even understand if this government is sensitive enough to the plight of Nigerians. Because you hear certain people trying to make this a political thing. Some are calling it all sorts of things. I've seen so many things like putting a curfew, putting Oro Festival, even though they came out to deny that it wasn't them. It's just so many things going on since people started clamoring for this, what's it called, protest. So just give us an overview, right? Are there really clear demands for this protest that is supposed to happen on the 1st of August? And if so, what are they?
I think there are clear demands, but also we can't negate the fact that people are just, their own demand is just that they are upset, that they're just angry about the state of the nation. So some people really just want to express that anger without necessarily framing it as a demand. But for those who actually started the call for the End Bad Governance protest about 3 weeks ago, there are clear demands. There are demands around electoral reform. There are demands around reducing the price of fuel and electricity tariffs so the cost of living is lower. There are demands around minimum wage. Even though when they started, government hadn't agreed, now that they've agreed, let me give you a bit of context. In 2012, when we did the Occupy Nigeria protest, and a lot of the people in office now were part of that protest, minimum wage was 18,000 naira. And converted to dollars, it was about $128. Now that they've increased minimum wage to 70,000 naira, 70,000 naira is $46. So that just gives you context. Now, it's not to say, obviously, if it's increased in a huge jump, it would also have inflationary effects. And it's not only government that it affects, it also affects private sector because salaries across board will change. But I think there's a need to have an honest conversation around how this cannot be something we review every 3 years. So that's also part of the demand. And not calling it a minimum wage, but calling it a living wage. There's a demand around NSAS. A lot of the states have not followed through on their judicial panels. They haven't paid their compensation. There's some NSAS protesters still in jail. There's a demand around declaring a state of emergency in education, given the horrible state of public education in Nigeria. There's a demand around the size of government. So government has continuously told us to tighten our belts, but we don't see governments doing that. Instead, they are talking about opening another ministry for livestock or whatever it is. The Oronsoye report that was supposed to shrink the size of government still hasn't been implemented. I mean, those are the ones I remember off the top of my head. But as you can see, there are very clear demands of, look, we need to show that you understand what's going on with citizens. And of course, there's insecurity. How could I forget that? I mean, there are places in the middle belt that farms have been taken over, people are not farming. And we see that in the cost of food that we were talking about. My fellow plantain lover, I feel your pain. Like I can eat plantain for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But in this economy, that's not happening. It's not happening. So, and that's real. Insecurity, not just in terms of farms, but just in your cities. People are robbing because people don't have jobs. People are trying to find something. I mean, not to justify stealing, obviously, but if you live in an environment where there are no consequences for bad behavior and government doesn't provide an enabling environment, we shouldn't be surprised that people turn to crime.
All right, then. So we have various school of thoughts. Some people believe that, this strike is worthless, and others actually think that, it's important to get out there. But I'd like to ask you, we've done this a couple of times. I mean, 2012, we've had several protests, and as it is, I don't think that it's going to end. Do you think that this is going to yield the desired result? I mean, what the people are asking for. Do you think this would actually make any sense or make any difference whatsoever?
Protests always do. I firmly believe that they always do because they're expressions in a moment in time. And I think what we tend to forget with protests is that we assume that once you've made your demands, and in some cases when you get your demand, then you're done. There's that popular quote, eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. that there must be constant pressure of those in power. And we've seen government's response. They've suddenly made a U-turn this evening, which is making me very suspicious, to be honest. But now they say all police, the IG is saying you must come and register, and they are afraid of violence and saboteurs. Now the IG is saying all police officers should support protesters. Tinubu's spokesperson is saying disregard members of our government that's speaking against protests, that Nigerians have a right to protest. Please go ahead with your protest. The citizen wants to exercise voice. I think that's important. If you take NSAS, and people tend to say that, oh, what did that accomplish? Yes, they scrapped SARS, they created SWAT, but I know two non-profits that have come out of that I helped, even though they didn't get the results they wanted. But Labour turned in a certain number of people at National Assembly and state houses of assembly, got a lot more people interested in politics and engaging. So it might not be those like eureka, the whole world is transformed. But once we make those demands at a point in time, we must remember that we have to follow. We can't do it and then be like, okay, we're done. Let everything go back to status quo.
Yemi, let me talk about, let's talk about us Nigerians, because I mean, it's something that affects us all, not just one. We've seen many people come out, obviously paid, crowds to say, oh, we're standing against the protest. We protest that you don't protest. I mean, for the want of a better way to put it. And then, of course, it has become a regional thing. We're also seeing regions say, oh, we're not going to do it. We, the Igbo people, we're not part of the protest. Oh, we, the Northerners. Does this not say something about how selfish and greedy we are as a people for the politicians to continuously be able to divide us against ourselves?
Indeed. And I think it's just like a human nature thing. As we jokingly say in Nigeria, it's my thief, leave my thief for me. And unfortunately, it's also the way we've been socialized around, as long as I'm close to people in power and I can get something, then it's okay. It doesn't matter what's going on. And it's it is what it is, to be honest. And I don't like to spend too much time on the fact that humans are behaving like humans and humans are allowing themselves to, as long as I'm okay, let me put it that way, and as long as I can get what I want, then I'm fine. We must constantly remind people and help them connect the dots between what happens in government and their quality of their lives. And there's nowhere else around it, which is why for me, the point you were making about ethnicity, another one that's been very poor in fairness is religious institutions. So CAN came out with a statement, ECWA came out with a statement, Cochrane came out with a statement, and all of them more or less saying the same thing. Oh, let's dialogue, maybe protest is not the way, and then silence. But you're in this country, especially religious institutions that speak around justice, that speak around fairness. How does that not tie into the quality of lives of people that are technically under your care? So it is bad. And as people that compare us to Kenya has found a way. I mean, they're much smaller and they haven't had the history we've had in terms of divisive politics, even though they've had their share. But I think around these issues, they prioritize themselves, that it's not about which party is in power or which ethnic group is affected. I'm prioritizing my life, and that's what this is about. Nigerians were not quite there. It's a journey, and at some point, I think people would choose themselves over if they're Yoruba or Christian or from the Southeast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Yemi Adamolekun, for your time this evening.